All right, welcome back. We are going to do another Network Plus quiz bank for practice quiz number 5. 5 more multiple choice questions to you to go through. I think I made them a little bit more difficult this time. I think we saw some outputs from tools. It's going to be a good one. I think that we're going to, like always, we're going to start easy. And then we're going to work our way up to hard. And hopefully we get some education out of it. So hopefully you learn something from it as we dissect these questions as we go through. I don't know if I've said this yet or not. I mean, I don't have the greatest memory. I honestly think that I've got too much brain power that's being sucked out of my head because I'm bald. And so I used to have hair there. It kept the brain cells in, and now it just kind of comes sucking out, unfortunately. But I don't know if I've said this or not. You should be scheduling your exam 60 days out. Minimum. I should say maximum of 60 days out. Maximum of 60 days out. We do this for 2 reasons. One, you get a psychological notion inside your head that, hey, I need to take the exam. There is a deadline for this exam. There is a deadline. And so I need to meet that deadline. That's going to physically put in your mind that I have to meet that deadline. You have a obligation to continue to study, to prepare for that. And then you will mark it on your calendars, tell your friends and neighbors about it, tell everyone associated with you that, hey, I'm going for my Network Plus exam on this date. That makes it real. It's not enough just to put it on the calendar. You have to make it real. And then from there, psychologically speaking, you'll start going more into it. I used to listen to podcasts. They weren't podcasts at the time. I used to listen to podcasts and radio shows about networking. And then Udemy came out, and I feel like I would start reading Udemy. I feel like I would go on Udemy and start listening to these. I would listen to any content that I have. You need to invest yourself into this world and just go through it. And then, of course, listening to quiz exams like this, always helpful, always helpful. And then always ask questions. If you don't understand something, ask a question. Get somebody to ask it. It doesn't matter if it's on YouTube. It doesn't matter if it's somewhere else. I'm happy. If I see a good question on YouTube, or if I see a good question somewhere else that I think would be great on my quiz, I will put it on there. We will ask that question and we'll answer it for you. And I think that would be awesome. I think that would be great if we had that interactive community on there. And then, as always, get with friends. Get with people that are doing it and go through there. All right, so anyway, 60 days out, you should be scheduling your exam. So if you're starting to study now, you should start to schedule your exam 60 days out. Don't forget, you can get a 10% discount. If you're academic, you can almost, I think it's 45% discount. It's 40 or to 50% discount if you're academic, meaning you have an EDU email address, okay? And you can get that discount on there as well. And that's not through me, that's through CompTIA, all right? All right, moving on. Let's see if we can't knock some of these answers out. Let's see if we can't do this. Question number 1, start off really easy. What is the default port number for HTTPS? I feel like this one's really easy. I feel like if you're studying for Network Plus, you're probably like, oh, dude, I thought you were going to ask me something hard. Like this is, like I said, we're starting off very easy. This just shows you have to memorize those ports and protocols. You have to. If you don't memorize the ports and protocols, you're going to have a rough take at Network Plus. You're going to have a rough take at security. You're going to have a rough take at any certification exam. This is like required, I feel like. All right, so what is the default port for HTTPS? What do you think? I'm going to give you a second to go through this and think about it. All right, we're going to go ahead and answer this one. If I'm going too fast for you, go ahead and pause that video because we're going to go ahead and answer this one. Port 21, FTP, File Transfer Protocol. Not going to be the default port for HTTPS. Which one should we get rid of next? Process of elimination says D, port 110, Post Office Protocol 3. Has to do more with mail than it does with, HTTPS. So that leaves us with port 80 and port 443. Port 80 and port 443. I'm going to have to go with port 443. That is the default port for HTTPS. Now, if we were talking about HTTP, we were just doing HTTP, it would be port 80, but it's not. It specifically says HTTPS. The default port number for HTTPS is port 443. There we go. Probably a little bit too easy for some of you. I know it was too easy for some of you, but let's move on. There we go. There's our answer. Let's move on to the next question. Which command can be used to display the IP address configuration on a Windows machine? Again, pretty easy one. Pretty easy one. We're not going to do a lot of time on this one. I want to point out 30 to 45 seconds. You should be on there, 30 to 45 seconds. The more time you save on a question, that's the more time that we have for harder questions and the more time we have for those performance-based questions. Remember, expect 2 to 4 performance-based questions at the beginning of your exam. We're going to skip those. We're going to flag those. We're going to skip those. And then we're going to get right into the multiple choice. We're not even going to read the performance-based ones. We're not even going to read them. We're just going to skip them. We're going to flag them. We're going to move on with our lives. We'll get back to them at the end of the multiple choice when our nerves have calmed down and we're in the groove. That's when we want to do performance-based questions. We don't want to do them at the beginning. All right, I think this is enough time. We only wanted to do 30, 45 seconds. Let's knock this one out, especially for this easy one. Which command can be used to display the IP address configuration on a Windows machine? Well, it's not route. Route would be the precursor for routing commands. Give us the routing table if we wanted to. We do route print. We can do other things with it. Not going to be route. I feel like that was the easy one to knock off. What about ifconfig? ifconfig. That is a Linux command. That's a Linux command. That is not the Windows command. That is a Linux command. Might even be a Mac command. Definitely not the Windows command. What about AIP space ADDR? What about that one? Or ipconfig? What about that one? It's got to be one of those. Most people who did not study or who weren't prepared probably said IP space ADDR. That would give us the IP address inside of a Linux box as well, but it does not give us the configuration. ipconfig is the Windows, and it says it right there, Internet Protocol Configuration. And we are asking to display the IP address configuration, not just the IP address, the IP address configuration. And that is going to be C, ipconfig, right there. It's going to be for us. There you go. I hope you learned something. If you got it wrong, no big deal. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from being wrong. We don't learn from our successes. If we got it right, give yourself a crisp high five. I like to give myself a crisp high five. Give thyself that crisp high five right there. I know some of my students are just laughing at me right now. They're like, did he really do that again? Yes, I do that in the classroom too. But ipconfig is going to be the correct answer for that one. Pat yourselves on the back. Give yourself a hug. Let's go through it. Next question, question number 3. What does the following output from the arp-a command indicate? Ooh, a little bit more difficult. I told you we were going to ramp up. I told you we were going to ramp up. I feel like this is going to be a harder one. What does this output from arp-a indicate? What do you think? I'll give you a second on this one. We got to read through those answers. We got to read through the arp-a command tree. We have to figure this one out. This would be displayed, obviously, if you did the arp-a command on your screen, on your Windows device, or even on your Linux device. They would give you both the same way. What do you think? Well, we're going to go ahead and pause it if you don't have your answer yet. We're going to skip. All right, I'm going to give you 3, 2, 1. All right, let's answer it. All right, let's knock off A. The ARP cache is empty. Obviously, the cache isn't empty. It's showing us ARP. It's showing us 2 IP addresses. So obviously not the ARP cache is not being emptied. I think we can knock off C next. The device at 192.168.1.100 is not on the network. Of course it's not on the network. We know that. It's not even on the ARP table. It's not even on the ARP table. If it's not on the ARP table, it's not on the network. I mean, that's technically a true statement. It's technically a true statement. But if it's not there, there's got to be a better answer. There's got to be a better answer. So I'm going to get rid of C. We know that C is not on the network. Technically correct. Technically, but not one I would be like, no, I don't think so. All right. That leaves us with B and D. B and D. I'll let you give those last minute answers in there. Let you think about it. All right, let's knock off B. The device at 192.168.1.1 has a static ARP. It does not. It has a dynamic ARP. It even says it. It says it right there. Dynamic. That means the answer must be D. The ARP cache has dynamic entries for 2 devices. And of course it does because it says it right there. Now, let's take a second. Let's take a second and do this, right? Because I feel like people don't know ARP table. And so we're going to explain it. So we did an ARP-A and the Windows pushed out this. And so we can see from this that our IP address is 192.168.1.100. That's our IP address. So when I said the device is not on the network, that's kind of a lie because it kind of is. It's right here. It's our IP address. We know that. That's our interface that we're on. So yeah, it's there. It's there. It's right there, right? What about the next one, right? We are seeing IP addresses. So this is our machine. That's our host. And we get 192.168.1.1. Usually, this is our router, usually. And we can see the MAC address. This is the physical address, the MAC address. In this case, 00.14.22.01.23.25, or excuse me, 45. And then we can see that it either has a dynamic or a static address. Dynamic meaning that it was given by the DHCP. Static is if we had programmed it. Had we gone in there and manually set up this device to only have this IP address, then it would be static, but we didn't do that. So that's how to read this. The IP address, the MAC address, and then whether it is dynamic or static, and of course, our interfaces on this one. So I guess I was wrong when I said this is not on the network. And I said, of course it's not on the network. Well, technically it is. It's right there. It's right there. It's the host machine. So technically it is on the network. But I think you knew what I was saying. I think it wasn't on the ARP table. All right. All right, moving on. Let's get on to this. There we go. There's our answer right there. All right, moving on. Let's go to our next question. What does the following output from netstat command indicate? What does this one tell us? I'll give you a second on this one. A little bit of a different one from ARP, right? What do you think? All right. All right. Let's start with D. The firewall is blocking connections. There is nothing on here to show the firewall is blocking any connections. We don't see anything on here at all that says blocked. We don't see anything on here that says that there is a missing connection. We don't see anything like that. So obviously it's not blocking connections. The server is down. Well, we have a time wait, but we don't have anything saying it's down. And so I would say no, that is not true. I feel like this one was easy, not medium, but not easy. Not very easy. So I'm gonna put it right there at easy. Right there, like at a 2 to 5 scale, I put it as a 2. There are no active connections. I think we know there's active connections. We can see them on the page. That means there are active connections on port 480 and 443. So let's dissect this one, shall we? Here we go. We have the protocol we use, TCP. We have the IP address, 192.168.1.100, and it's the same for both. But then right here, after this colon, we see port 80 and port 443. So we have HTTP and HTTPS. And we can see the foreign address associated with both connections, right? And so we can see we have an established connection on port 80, and we're waiting to connect for 443. That's that time wait right there, right? So we do have connections. And the time wait, I could see how somebody might say, well, the server's down because we see that time wait, but that's not necessarily true. It's like when I call my wife from the store and I'm like, she's at Walmart, right? She's out there and she's like, you know what I need to call her up and I need to ask her for a tool. I need to ask her to get me some very specific nails, maybe a very specific piece of hardware that I need to fix in the house. And I call her up and she's at Walmart and I'm like, hey, honey, can you get this for me? And you know she's already hung up on me, right? Like mentally, she's already hung up on me. She hasn't done it yet, but mentally she has. And she's like, okay, I'm not going to talk to you right now. And it's that silence right before she hangs up, right before she just sits there and you know that she's at the store looking at her phone, like, and she's got this expression on her face that basically says WTF, right? And that's what she's looking at the phone with. And then she's like, I can't even, and she just hangs up on me. That's what time wait is. It's the response from the server just before it hangs up on you. It's like, I'm waiting to make sure there isn't anything else that you want to ask me before I hang up on you. It's like my wife looking at the phone, hoping that I didn't call her to do something stupid like this. Like, she's like, did you actually want something that I would get you? Or are you going to just be stupid? And that's right before she hangs up on me. So that's what time wait is. That's what time wait is. All right, I think we're ready to move on. Question number 5. What does the following output from the ipconfig command indicate? What do you think? And you got to read through this one. I feel like you got this. I feel like you're looking at this screen, you're looking at the information, and you're going through it in your mind, and you're like, okay, I've got this. And you do. And remember, if you're looking at this and you're completely lost, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to explain it. So at least you came here and you learned something. That's all that we're here for. If you don't know what you're looking at, that's okay. We're gonna go through. We're gonna explain it, and you're gonna be okay. If you're looking at it and you're like, I got this, I know exactly what it is, then good for you. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Remember, we learn from our successes. No, we learn from our failures. We don't learn from our successes. Remember that. Okay. It's always nice to be successful. Let's be honest here, right? Everybody likes to be right. But if you're like me, you're often, far more often, wrong than you are right. So let's go ahead and knock this one out. If you need to, go ahead and pause it. If not, we're going to continue down this pipeline. We're going to go ahead and answer this question. What does the following output from the ipconfig command indicate? I can't believe I said ifconfig. ipconfig command indicate. Well, let's get the easy one out of the way. The Ethernet adapter is not connected. Obviously, it's connected. We've got an IP address. We have a subnet mask. We have a default gateway. We even see DHCP, and we see the DNSXX as example.com. So obviously, the Ethernet adapter is connected. It has internet because it's going to example.com. So obviously it is working, which also means that the DNS server is down. Obviously it's not down. We see the DNS suffix completed as example.com. So we have that DNS suffix at example.com. We have an IP address. We could not extrapolate that the DNS server is down based on the information provided. So that's not going to be it. That leaves B and C as our practical options. What do you think, B or C? Let's see. One is dynamic and one is static. So how do we tell, based on this alone, do we have a dynamic or do we have a static IP address? One is set up by the DHCP and one is set up manually. And if you knew the DHCP set it up dynamically, then you would know that the answer is B. The IP address is assigned dynamically, and we can tell based on the clues given. So let's break this down a little bit, right? Here we go. We have an IP config output, and we see the Ethernet adapter, Ethernet, and we can see that's there. It doesn't really tell us anything. But then we see connection-specific DNS. We can see example.com. That's how we know that the DNS server is probably up. It can't be precise. We don't know exactly, but chances are it is. Like, we can't be 100%, but it's a good chance it's up, right? And there's nothing else on here at all anywhere that suggests that it's down. So D's not going to be right. Then we see our IP addresses, right? We have our host machine's IP address is 192.168.1.100. That's our host machine. We see that we're operating on subnet mask 255.255.255.0. That's going to give us a /24 CIDR. Or we know that the network or the subnet we're operating on is 0 through 254, right? That gives us a 255, excuse me. That gives us those 256 IP addresses. And then we have the default gateway set up as 192.168.1.1. It's most likely our router. We can see that. But then here's the real clue. DHCP is enabled. Yes. And whenever we have DHCP enabled, we most likely are operating on a dynamic IP address. And we can even see our DHCP server, which we really didn't need. Just the yes alone would have given us that. And we can see that we are on a dynamic IP address. I hope that makes sense. I hope you're able to read a little bit better if you didn't know how to before. Let's see if I'm right. There we are. It's right. All right. That was Network Plus. Really easy today. We're definitely going to do 5 more questions. We're definitely going to go through and keep doing this and see if we can't get some more practice questions. I hope this is helpful. If you found it to be educational, if you found it worth your while, if you would hit that like, that subscribe, and of course, that little bell icon, I would appreciate it, as I'm sure I could produce more content knowing that viewers like you are actually watching it. And that would make me feel better. All right? So if you could do that, I would appreciate it. In the meantime, my name is Dr. K, and we will see you again. Thank you very much. Have a good one.